Hello guys, welcome back to another video. We are working on a BMW X5 3-litre diesel with the M57 engine today. Before we get into things, make sure you give this video a like. It really does help me out and it shows your appreciation. Now then, before we get started, you may or may not be able to hear a metallic rattle, and I'm pretty sure it is actually the alternator. I think the pulley on that is going bad, but I'm not too concerned about that. That is not what we are tackling today, but I know I would get a few people ask what that metallic rattling noise is. Now today we are hoping to tackle a whole bunch of different jobs. So first and foremost, in the big box, this is a brand new genuine Pierberg intake manifold. Obviously I'll get that out later. We have a full EGR and EGR cooler delete kit. We have a coolant flange to replace. We have, of course, 6 new glow plugs and a glow plug module. Now then, why are we installing all of this goodness today? Well, it's basically going to be for preventative maintenance, although we do have, I believe, one glow plug faulty, so we're going to be swapping out all of the glow plugs along with the glow plug module. If you are doing the glow plugs on one of these M57 engines, you want to do the glow plug module at the same time. They are a common failure point. They do last 150,000 miles or so, but yeah, if you want to do the glow plugs, obviously you have to remove the intake manifolds, and you are just as well to replace the module at the same time. Now, why are we replacing the intake manifold, you're probably wondering? Well, the original intake manifold, although I am led to believe that this actually isn't an original intake manifold, I don't think this is a factory sticker. So whether or not this is an original intake manifold, we don't know, but essentially we have two options. So we could of course remove the original intake manifold and do a swivel flap delete, although you are going to get some drawbacks with that, we shall say. You obviously are going to lose a little bit of low down torque, and you are going to lose as a result some MPG as well. Now of course, if we did want to go down the route of removing the swivel flaps, we would also have to thoroughly clean the original intake manifold as well, and that's going to take, you know, a good amount of time. And I think the best option, because this is not my car, this is a friend's car that I'm working on, the best option is to just install a brand new intake manifold. It's going to ensure that everything is nice and clean, and the swivel flaps should be functioning exactly as they were intended to. Now pretty much the main reason why the swivel flaps fail on these M57 engines anyway is because of the EGR valve. Obviously it lets all of the sooty exhaust gases through. Combine that with the crankcase oil vapors, it sticks to the swivel flaps themselves, and then yeah, it leads to failure. But of course we are going to be tackling the EGR side of things today. We have a full EGR kit to go on. And while we have the intake manifold removed, I'm also going to be tackling this coolant flange. This is a common failure point as well, and it's not too much direct from BMW, so may as well tackle this while we have everything removed. Now for those that are wondering, I have the engine running because I want to get the engine up to temperature. It's going to make the removal of the glow plugs a whole lot easier. If you are ever removing glow plugs, it makes it so much easier on a nice warm engine. So once the engine gets up to temperature, I'll switch it off, remove the intake manifold, then proceed in removing the glow plugs straight away. Okay then, so engine is up to temp now, nice and warm, and I just want to point out the reason that we're doing these jobs now is because we noticed a coolant leak. Originally it looked like it was coming from down below on one of the coolant hoses, but I know all too well that this can be a complete throw off. So I looked at the highest point where I could see coolant dripping from, and believe it or not, it's actually coming from the EGR thermostat itself. Now I don't think I've ever seen this before, but the end of it has cracked off, or was broken off, and as you can see, dripping out of there, and what it's doing is running out of there, running along the seam between the EGR thermostat and the EGR cooler, and then running down the EGR cooler itself, and then down a whole bunch of pipes. But yeah, let me know if you've ever seen that before. I don't even know how it's possible to to break that off. Whether or not the previous owner swapped this out and they broke the end of it, but we didn't notice this leaking when we bought the car, so yeah, bit of a strange one that. Okay then, so let's proceed in removing the intake manifold. So just going to get the anti-shudder valve disconnected and the air temperature sensor unplugged as well. Get that out of the way, and also the map sensor, just unplug that, and I'm just going to start removing all of the bolts. Of course the bolts are 10 mils. Remember to keep that bracket to one side. I think we have a broken bolt at the back here, because that was just loose. That's strange. I don't look like it's broken, but it's not actually going into anything. So we'll have to investigate that. Yeah, this has definitely been off before, so I'm guessing that it probably already has a swivel flap delete as well, to be fair, if somebody has already removed this. And then the nuts, of course, are 11 mils. So that should be all of the main intake manifold nuts and bolts released. Also done the dipstick bolt as well, the 10mm bolt holding that to the intake manifold. Now I'm going to work on getting the intake pipe removed. This is a bad design because the securing clip holding it on is fouling against the EGR cooler pipe. So you really have to try and force it out of shape, or just remove the clip completely. There we are. Of course we won't have that issue once this is all removed. Now it should just be this Jubilee clamp we need to remove. There we go. Now the intake manifold should be pretty free now. Yep. Of course we will have some vacuum hoses and various electrical connectors to disconnect while we lift this up. Remove that vacuum hose. And one and two. There we are. There we are then. That's the intake manifold now removed. As you can see, swirl flaps are still in place. But yeah, this more than likely has been replaced at some point. The intake manifold doesn't look too badly clogged up. Very dirty, but doesn't look too badly clogged up, so it's probably been removed to have a good clean out at some point. But anyway, of course we need to work fairly quick. We want the engine to be nice and warm. So I am going to remove the glow plug connectors. I must say, it appears we have a massive oil leak somewhere here, but it doesn't look like it's actually coming from anywhere. I reckon that the intake manifold gaskets have just failed. It looks like it's literally just coming from the intake ports, so just as well that we are swapping out the intake manifold anyway, or at least, you know, with fresh new gaskets. We'll of course give all this a good clean up before we put everything back. The glow plugs themselves should be a 10mm. Yep. I'm just going to crack these loose with a torque wrench. You should be fine theoretically with just a regular ratchet, but if you just set the torque wrench to the tightening torque, then it's just an extra step of precaution essentially. Just got to take your time when it comes to removing glow plugs. I think there's a chance that these have been replaced at some point in the past, because these do not feel tight at all. No, these are all loose. Still though, one has failed. That's really strange. At least 3 of them feel loose, the rest feel pretty tight. Yeah, why does some feel loose and some feel tight? Maybe some have been replaced, some haven't. Not too sure why you would do that. So yeah, a bit of a strange one. Cylinder 1 and cylinder 5, they feel pretty tight, whereas 2, 3, 4 and 6, they all came out nice and easy. Okay, so I managed to eventually free up cylinder 5 and cylinder 1. Essentially just keep going back and forth, and just take your time with it really. Don't put too much force on the ratchet or the torque wrench. And yeah, I can't say I've ever snapped a glow plug, to be honest, so it's just something you've got to be careful with. There's the first one removed. Yeah, this is a Bosch glow plug, which is good to see. More than likely is the original. There's a second one, again Bosch. This number 2 was the one that actually failed, and look how much carbon there is on the end of it. Compare that to the first one. Okay, so there we go then, all 6 glow plugs now removed, all Bosch, all more than likely the original from factory. I'm just going to try my best now to clean all of this oil down. It's absolutely covered in here, and it's all ran onto the transmission as well, and it's, I know the underside of the engine is absolutely covered in oil. It's crazy to think all this just from the intake manifold seals leaking, but I guess, you know, over time, over years of use, the amount that you have coming from the crankcase breather is you know, is a lot over time, I guess. But yeah, let's start attacking this with some brake cleaner. Oh, that's much better. Now I know what a lot of you are thinking. Have you really just sprayed brake cleaner over the intake ports and the glow plug wells? Yes, I have, but any brake cleaner that has gone down into the engine is more than likely evaporated, but any that is still remaining, I'm going to turn the engine over with the glow plugs removed, of course, so any excess brake cleaner will just force its way out. So yeah, we're not going to hydro lock the engine, don't worry. Now then, just look at how clean these intake ports are. This is a diesel engine that has covered 110,000 miles now, I think. These intake ports are looking spotless. I guess that trick with the brake cleaner actually worked quite well. Okay, so next thing I want to do then is swap out this coolant flange here. Yep, it's the exact same part, so I'm just going to remove both these coolant hoses, remove those 3 bolts, and that can get out of the way. And I can also tackle the glow plug module as well, which I believe just lives right underneath it. Okay then, so as you can see, both the coolant flange and the glow plug module are now removed. I'm going to give everything another quick clean down, and then we can get the new items in place. Okay, so everything's had another clean down. As you can see, new glow plug module is now in place. Those 2 nuts have been tightened down as well. Everything is now plugged in. Okay, so new coolant flange in as well. I'm just going to make sure those 3 bolts are torqued down to 10 Newton meters. Yeah, that's more than enough for those 3 bolts. Now I get these coolant hoses plumbed back in as well. There we are, both of the clips are installed. Now it's time to begin installing the new glow plugs. Okay, so they now are all hand tight. I'm just going to torque them all down to 10 Newton meters. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we can just reinstall all of the glow plug connectors. And there we are. That's the glow plugs now replaced. And now before I install the new intake manifold, I'm going to begin in removing the EGR cooler. So I believe there is 2 bolts where the EGR cooler bolts onto the DPF, and then there is 1 bolt here, kind of underneath the vacuum pump. It's another Torx bolt, and then I believe there is 1 bolt just here behind this or underneath this EGR thermostat here. Oh, and then of course we have the coolant lines as well. Need to disconnect them where necessary. There we go. It's the EGR cooler and thermostat now removed. That was a bit fiddly. Just need to figure out which pipes are staying and which need to be removed and blanked off. Okay then, so it's just these 2 coolant pipes that are removed. As you can see, blanking plug on there, then a blanking plug on there as well, secured with a Jubilee clamp. And now I guess all that's left to do is to install the blanking plate onto the DPF, which comes with a gasket and new bolts, of course. Okay then, so that blanking plate is now installed, just there. Now it's on the end of the exhaust manifold. I don't know why I said it's on the end of the DPF. Obviously you have the exhaust manifold, Obviously you have the exhaust manifold, then the turbo, then the DPF comes after the turbo. I think on some models though, the EGR coolant does bolt onto the DPF, but yeah, in this case it just bolts onto the exhaust manifold. I just want to give this area a bit of a clean down, because as you can see, this coolant pipe here is absolutely covered in oil, and along with this boost hose here as well. And also along with this intake pipe here, I believe it was coming from this small rubber hose here. Now the hose, I don't think the hose has particularly failed. I just think it is a case of the crankcase breather maybe being blocked up and just letting way too much oil through. And so we are going to be also swapping out a crankcase breather, but I'll do that probably in a separate video because we are still waiting for that to arrive. But for now then, I guess we should get the new intake manifold ready for reinstallation. So here's the new one. There's the nice and filthy old one. Just have a couple of bits to swap over. So of course we have the EGR delete tube to install as well, and then the anti-shudder valve that can go onto it, and then we have the original map sensor. Then we also have the vacuum solenoid, which just slides onto the back of the intake manifold as well. Okay then, so everything is now swapped over. So of course EGR blanking tube, anti-shudder valve, vacuum solenoid, and the map sensor as well. Now let's get this new intake manifold installed. Okay, so all of the bolts and the nuts are just nipped down. It's time to start torquing them down. The bolts themselves are just 6mm bolts. They are only 8 Nm. Then the nuts, they are over 7mm studs. They should be 13 Nm. So it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to start from the inside and work my way out. Okay, so that's all of the bolts torqued down. Now let's do these 7 nuts. There we go, that's all of the nuts torqued down. I've gave this pipe a good thorough clean. This was completely covered in oil and God knows what else, but yep, spotless now, so this can go back in place. Okay, so as you can see, the intake pipe is now in place, and that was actually pretty tricky to get on. So where it goes onto the turbo, there's like a rubber boot that has to slide on. It's pretty tight on there. And to get this pipe on as well, that's pretty awkward, but yeah, we got there in the end. It's all perfectly straight and in position how it should be. Obviously the 2 bolts where it bolts onto the mass airflow sensor, they're both tightened down as well. And I'm actually going to leave things as they are for now. I do have some other jobs to do, but they'll be coming later on. I'm going to be actually, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to be doing. Just stay tuned and look forward to it. So yeah, I'm not going to go ahead and put any of the covers back yet, because yeah, we're definitely not finished with this. But what is the take-home message for this video? Remove your EGR valve. If you keep this thing in place, you are asking for trouble. This thing, by nature, is designed to fail. It is only going to get worse than this. This has obviously been cleaned before, but just look at how much carbon is built up in here. You want this outside of your engine, not inside of your engine. And so if you are thinking of doing a full EGR delete, so you're thinking of removing the EGR cooler as well, which I must say gives so much better access in the engine bay, especially in something like an X5 where it is very limited anyway. You know, you're going to have much better access to the drive belts, crankshaft pulley, things like that now. But yeah, if you are thinking of removing the EGR, do the cooler at the same time as well. If it's something that's not being used, you know, you may as well just go ahead and remove it and get it out of the way, save yourself some weight, and like I said, make some more room inside of the engine bay. Now of course, doing things like swapping out the intake manifold, that is completely optional. If you want, you can just go ahead and clean your original one up, but there is a good chance that these seals, especially on the swirl flaps, may have failed. Now if you want to do a swirl flap blank, that's completely up to you. I get the reasons for doing it, they are prone to fail, but the main reason for the swirl flaps themselves failing is the introduction of exhaust gases going back into the intake manifold and then getting the swirl flaps clogged up with carbon and not being able to move properly. But obviously we have no EGR gases now going into the intake manifold, so this should remain spotless, and the swirl flaps themselves should be able to function as they were intended to pretty much forever. Okay then, so there we go. I'm going to leave this video here. Now I know I'm going to get a bunch of people asking, when you do an EGR delete, do you have to map it out? Yes, you do have to map it out. You have to take your car for a remap or a retune, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, you will have to get it mapped out, otherwise you will have, more than likely you'll have an engine management light come up after around 20 or 30 miles or so. Now on this particular engine, it won't, or it shouldn't send the car into limp mode. You know, you won't really notice any difference, to be honest, other than an improved throttle response. That's also one of the benefits of doing a EGR delete, but you won't really see any negative effects other than the engine management light being illuminated. Now how long do you want to leave it before getting a remap? You know, you can leave it a couple of weeks, you should be fine. But a big point I do want to make is, if you are removing your EGR system and you have your DPF in place, there is a good chance that that DPF will get clogged up quicker. So obviously bear all this in mind. If you want to do a DPF delete as well, it's worth doing kind of at the same time, and then obviously you can get them both mapped out when you go for, you know, when you get your car tuned. So yeah, a lot of things to consider. But hopefully you all have enjoyed this video. Hopefully you've enjoyed seeing some content on a BMW X5. Like I said, it's not my car, it's a friend's car. I'm doing, you know, a whole bunch of jobs for him. I've done I think I've done a couple of videos already on this channel on this car, so let me know if you want to see more. Yeah, just leave comments down below. But yeah, like I said, I want to thank all of you for watching. Please give this video a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe if you have not already done so, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.